for being with us today. I'd like to ask you just a few questions about the Antiquities Act. And, you know, based on conversations I've had with you in the past and based on other statements you've made elsewhere in the past, I know you've placed a lot of emphasis on the importance of local engagement during the process leading up to any monument designation under the Antiquities Act, and I appreciate that. For instance, after designating the Berryessa Snow Mountains in California as a national monument, you said, quote, "Today's action honors more than a decade of work by the local community to protect this beautiful landscape." After designating the Browns Canyon National Monument in Colorado, you repeated the same sentiment, saying, quote, "Today's designation follows more than a decade of work by the local community to protect this spectacular area." Now, it's widely reported, Secretary Jewell, that President Obama is considering designating a nearly 2 million acre national monument in San Juan County, Utah. That is in the southeastern corner of my state, the so-called Bears Ears National Monument. Much of this land, as you know, is owned by the federal government and managed by the Department of Interior. So since we both believe in local consultation, we believe that that ought to be a prerequisite to anything that culminates in a monument designation under the Antiquities Act, I just wanted to point out that there's not one elected official, not a single one, representing San Juan County, Utah, who supports the creation of a national monument under the Antiquities Act. And specifically, I want to point out that on September 1st of last year, the San Juan County Board of Commissioners passed a resolution stating, quote, "Be it resolved, the San Juan County Commissioners strongly oppose the unilateral use of the Antiquities Act to designate a national monument within San Juan County and instead supports locally driven land use planning." On February 10th of this year, the entire Utah federal delegation wrote a letter to President Obama plainly stating, quote, "We do not support the use of the Antiquities Act within our community and ask that the administration withdraw any plans to do so." And then just yesterday, Utah Governor Gary Herbert wrote a letter to the president in which he said, quote, "As evidenced by opposition from virtually every elected county, state, and federal official, the state of Utah strongly opposes any unilateral monument designation within our state." Now, this, of course, does not mean that the people of Utah or the people in San Juan County in particular do not care about the land or about protecting it. Quite to the contrary, elected officials throughout Utah, including and especially those in San Juan County, have been very supportive of a 3-year intensive effort involving the Public Lands Initiative. There is a lot of support for protecting the land in this way. So let me just start by asking you, do you still believe that collaboration and local support is a necessary condition precedent that ought to precede any designation of a monument under the Antiquities Act?
Well, Senator, the Antiquities Act is a very important tool that presidents have had since Theodore Roosevelt. It's been used, I would argue, sparingly and carefully. So I have no ability to change the president's capacities to act in his own way as it relates to that. I will say that he's used it 22 times in his administration. In every case, we have had engagement on the ground in the communities to understand everybody's opinions. I've been to many of those meetings. They have never been unanimous, but they have also always provided a good balance.
Right.
And so
you've at least had widespread public participation. You've at least had a lot of support, even if it's not unanimous.
Well, we've had public participation. I don't know how one defines widespread, but I will say this:
You've had some. You've had some. There's been some.
We have had some participation. In the case of Utah, we have been invited by the tribes to go out there. There's a number of tribes that are very interested in protecting an area that you reference that has a tremendous archaeological, anthropological, and cultural significance to them. They have met with me in my office. I have actually asked that they come over and meet with the Utah delegation, particularly Congressman Bishop, because of his public lands initiatives work. I've met with Congressman Bishop and Chaffetz on that. We had 2 meetings scheduled over the last couple of weeks, both of which they canceled because of votes, which I understand. I will also say that what started off as an effort that seemed to be very collaborative is now fracturing somewhat. So there is a lot of interest in protecting lands that people thought in the Public Lands Initiative would have greater protections than how that initial language is coming out. So I'll continue to meet with the delegation on this, and as we have interest to move additional protections in places like San Juan County, we will be engaging with people in those communities.
Okay, so I'm out of time, but before I stop, I just want to make sure, so will you commit to consulting with Utah's local communities, governor, and our congressional delegation before anyone makes a final decision?
Well, to be clear, I can't commit to anything with regard to the Antiquities Act because that is a tool of the President of the United States. I will commit that we will go out and spend time within the community and take input from the community. That is something that we have done every time, and we will continue to do that.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I appreciate knowing that everywhere else the President's used this, he has had some local buy-in, and we don't have that here. So I appreciate your commitment on that. Thank you, Madam Secretary.